All right, Caleb, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I know
Pumped.
you've got a lot of things on the go right now. You're Chiro Intern, you're a CrossFit athlete, CrossFit coach,
Yep.
strength and conditioning background. So give me the origin story on that. Where did that come from?
Oh man. So going into undergrad, I really had no idea what I wanted to do or get into. And I think they should honestly, if you tell kids hey, if you don't know what you want to do, go in undecided, use the first couple years, do your gen eds, then you'll figure out your passion along the way. So I originally declared freshman year pre-med, because I watched Grey's Anatomy all summer before my freshman year, and I was like, I want to be a surgeon, it looks so cool, I'm gonna be super rich. And then I don't know, I just had a really hard time making the transition from high school to college. I didn't know how to do it, if that makes sense. And so it was just really stressful the first semester, being pre-med and not knowing how to do college. So I ended up just dropping the really hard bio and chem courses, and then just I think I took 10 credits my first semester at college. And then I was undecided for a couple semesters, and then I was okay, I gotta figure this out. What do I want to do? And I was okay, what do I like? What did I like in high school? And I was well, I was good at math, and I liked my math teachers. I was really passionate about soccer, so I was okay, let's declare math education. I could be a teacher in a high school and coach soccer. That sounds pretty good. So I did that, and then calculus 2 kicked my ass so hard. And I was well, if I can't do calculus 2, it's just gonna keep getting harder. So I dropped math education, and then I literally got to the point where I was scrolling through our degree plans and just seeing what caught my eye, and exercise science was one of the options. And I was well, I like to work out, let's see what that's about. And it was a perfect fit. So I think I declared that my junior year of college, so it was kind of far behind to start a new degree. And so I literally took probably 4 classes that you're supposed to take prereqs to each other all in the same semester. And the administration was we don't really recommend this. And I was I know, but I need to do it. And they're well, if you fail, it's kind of on you. And I was that's fine. So I did it, and it was hard, but I learned a bunch, and it was a great experience. And I was super happy to just find my fit in college and what I was passionate about. So going through all those classes and stuff, I was okay, I want to kind of get more hands-on stuff. And so I reached out to the head strength coach of our club sports department. So I went to, my undergrad was Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. So they're a pretty big school. They're D1, but they have a really big club sports department too. So those teams are technically still considered D1. They're just not NCAA, but they compete on a pretty high level as well. So I started to just kind of shadow the head strength coach there. His name was Chris Kerr, and just get as much information as I can, ask stupid questions, just go to the weight room while he was leading the workouts and just observe. And then eventually he was hey, you're here a lot. Do you want me to make a work study position for you to clean the gym, quote unquote? And I was absolutely, the more I can be around here, the better. And so he created one of those for me. So I hung out even more. And then it got to the point where he had 2 GAs, graduate assistants, working for him, which are kind of assistant strength coaches and stuff. And one of them was graduating, and he was hey, this is open. I think you should apply for it. He's I'm no promises you're going to get it, but go ahead and apply for it. And I was that's awesome. So if you work for Liberty as a graduate assistant, they pay for your master's program. Mm-hmm. So I was 2 years of a free master's program, that's awesome. So I applied for it, and it was between me and another kid who was also a work study at that time. He was a rock star as well, and it came down to the interview, and I remember Chris pulled me into the office, and he was hey, and I was oh shit, I didn't get it. And he was we want to offer you the spot. You guys both had really awesome interviews, but what it came down to was you dressed up for the interview.
Really?
Yeah. And I guess the other kid kind of Because it's kind of like you go in, you're like, oh, I know these guys, we're bros, like you can kind of be like buddy with them. I was like, I perceive this as like a job opportunity, right? Like if I get this graduate assistantship, I also get paid, and I also get a paid master's program. So I'm basically getting paid to go to school and to gain all this experience. And so I took it seriously. So I dressed up. I brought my resume. I made 2 copies for both people that were in there, even though they already knew my resume. And I just treated it like a job interview. And he was like, yeah, the other kid showed up late, didn't dress up, kind of was more just like relaxed, and you were like very professional and all that stuff. So it just goes to show, like,
it's the details that matter, right?
Yeah.
One time I was applying for a job as like a fucking dishwasher. I was like,
I did one of those. It was awful.
16, and I passed the guy my resume. He's like, oh, thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it. He looks down at the paper. He's like, next place you go, make sure you staple this. And he like looks at me and he throws it in the garbage.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait, why didn't he just didn't care?
Just
Because you were like,
didn't
don't
like
need a
that
resume.
I didn't staple it, I guess.
I've always heard that this is what they taught us in undergrad, that you're supposed to paper clip it.
So they can look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I remember them saying, like, any ones that were stapled, they'd throw right in the trash can. Mm-hmm. But the ones that were paper clipped, they would look at. Like, I don't know the difference, but.
So what was that training like at the college? You did some sports there?
Yeah. So as a GA, you kind of get the teams that are kind of lower on the totem pole than like I think the ones that were higher up were like men's D1 hockey, women's D1 hockey, men's D2 hockey, wrestling, men's volleyball. So they were kind of like the bigger ones. So the GA's got kind of like the lower ones. So my 2 teams that I had were men's D3 hockey, the guys that just kind of wanted to like putz around and, you know, continue to play hockey after high school. They were a ton of fun. We can dive into that. And then I had the crew team. So competitive rowing on the water, like super cool sport, something that like I knew nothing about going into besides like rowing on an erg for CrossFit.
Yeah.
Which they do train on. So yeah, those were my 2 teams. And the second year they asked me if I wanted to keep D3 or like have kind of another like higher up. And I was like, well, I've like worked with these guys for a year. I'm just going to keep them, like continue to build relationships and see what I can do with them. And so I had D3 and crew for my 2 years there.
Yeah.
So
I imagine crew a lot different than doing a C2 erg rower because you have to steer it.
yeah, so I don't know like the actual like details of like how they steer it, but I know they have what's called a coxswain, which is like a really small person, like either in the back or the front of the boat that like tells them like left, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's like screaming like cadences and stuff like that, and like go left, go right if you start to get off.
Yeah.
But they have to weigh like 90 pounds.
Yeah.
So like they don't like drag the boat. So yeah.
Libero and volleyball.
Yeah, that's like a 5'2" guy that just passes.
Yeah.
But they have devices that you can hook C2 rowers up to that make it feel like you're on the water. So they kind of like when you pull, they kind of like shift together and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I actually went to just to like to see how they run one of their practices. I went to one of their indoor like erg sessions, and dude, it was so hard.
Yeah.
I think I ended up rowing I think it was only like 6,000 meters, but it was like different paces, and like we got on that I don't even know what you would call it, device that makes it feel like you're on the water, and it's like hard.
Yeah.
Like if you're off, you like smash into the person in front of you, and you're like, I'm sorry, and it like messes everybody up.
Really?
But think about it, like if you're on the water, like if your oar is off,
Yeah.
like it's just gonna screw everything up. So yeah, it's like way more. I think it's like way more difficult than people think. Yeah.
So you obviously didn't do the conditioning stuff. That was more by their coach, like the interval stuff. You were more strength, like how'd you train them? Like squat, deadlift?
Yeah, so I kind of developed my own kind of like philosophy with training the crew team that I think worked pretty well. So I think when I was like observing as a work study the crew team, it was just like a ton of like pulling. It was like inverted rows, it was dumbbell rows, but then he would balance it out with like a lot of pressing.
Sure.
just to make sure that like they're not creating like a lot of asymmetries, which and at the moment I was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Like do a lot of bench press with them so they're not like just building up their back muscles like crazy and forgetting about their anterior chain or whatever. And then when I started to coach them in the weight room, I was like, I don't want to waste time benching. Like if they're in season, I need to be doing like more sports specific training with them. And like never in a race are they ever going to like bench something, right? They're going to like use their legs to drive through and then pull the oar. So my philosophy with them was like, if you've ever done like a really long row.
Yeah, like 5-10K.
Yeah. Like what blows up for you? I can tell you what it is for me, but I just wanted to see what it is. What would it be for you?
Definitely arms and legs, like arms and quads maybe. Okay. Yeah, maybe like biceps and quads.
Biceps, you think?
Yeah. But that would be a direct reflection of my bastardized row technique. like a caveman or some sort of monkey.
We're going to have to maybe coach it up a little bit. So, yeah, I think for, like...
What do you think? Like hamstrings, glutes?
Hamstrings, glutes. I think, yeah, like legs in general.
Yeah.
And then, like, my core. Like, when you, like, lean back in row, like, you have to be able to, like, support your body weight, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And then, like, my upper T-spine just gets, like, rigid.
Yeah.
But for me, yeah, it's, like, lower body hamstrings and then, like, my core.
Yeah.
So I was like... If I can train them to have really, really strong cores and really, really strong legs, like if you think about it, your arms don't really do a whole lot in the row. Like it's like reach forward, your legs drive that bar back kind of as far as it can, and then it's like a little flick at the end.
Yeah, arms with straps kind of
right.
Coaching cue.
Yeah. On the water, it's different because like the oar is actually like a weight. Like those things are like really long and heavy. But in the weight room, so I did a lot of front squatting with them for legs, and then again the core, because like front squat's way harder on your core than back squat, and then deadlift too, and then on Wednesdays I actually stole this from Jacob Hepner. Do you know who that is? No. CrossFit Games athlete. He's not competitive anymore. I forget how many years he competed, but...
Like an individual guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he had a program out called Midwest Made that I did for a while, and he would program wall sit Wednesdays, and they were brutal. So it would be like a minute 30 of like a wall sit with like a 45-pound plate, and then you go right into like a squatting movement. So like front squats, he was known for like really heavy like goblet squats. Like I remember one, it was like minute 30 wall sit with a plate, and then it was like 15 goblet squats with like the 100-pound kettlebell. And then it was like another minute 30 wall sit with a plate. So like by the time you're on that second wall sit, like you're just screaming. Like so I did a version of that with them every week, and it was more so just to build up like their mental capacity.
Sure.
Like, is this physically going to have a benefit? Maybe. I'm not really concerned about that. What I was more concerned about was like, let's give them something in the weight room that's going to be way harder or toes the line with like that last 500 meters of a race. Because like, that's where it comes down to it. If you're like neck and neck with somebody, it's like, this is going to fucking hurt, and you're going to have to like dig deep on it.
Sure.
And so those wall sit Wednesdays would kind of like reiterate that feeling for them of like, this really hurts. But if I can get them to remember what we did in the weight room that Wednesday while they're in their race and being like, that Wednesday workout was pitiful and hard as hell. This doesn't even compare. They're going to win every time. They're going to be able to push through that wall. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah.
So that was, and we would do like a bunch of like assault bike sprint intervals too, just to like get them to like build up their mental capacity even more. Like, this is really, really hard. So when they get out on the water and they're in kind of like that same scenario of like mental fatigue and like physical fatigue, they can think back to that workout and be like, well, that weight room workout was like twice as hard as this. Like I'm okay. I can like push more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been doing that lately. Love David Goggins.
Yeah,
He's
dude.
my boy. He's a little intense, but you
Yeah.
know, even if he's too intense for you, like you can always decode his stuff.
Right.
I like what he says about the 50% rule. Is like, when you think that you're at your maximum, you're really working like 50%.
Yeah.
Your maximum. So that's like my inner mantra when I feel just like giving up.
Your mind gives out way before your body does.
I just say 50%. Like, and then like when I do it, I'm like, yeah, I kind of am being a little bitch right now.
Yeah. But then like after you're done, you're always like, oh, I could have gotten a little harder.
Yeah.
Like I hate that feeling knowing you like, I actually just did that to a kid the other day in a workout. It was like a 9-rounder one. And it was like the 6th one. And he was like, just kind of like dogging it. And I was like, dude, like stay mentally in it. Your mind gives out before your body does. Like you got it. And like he just needed that little boost in the middle.
Yeah.
He was fine.
Yeah. I mean, it also depends on people's goals. Some people aren't having the goal of being a warrior.
Yes.
And that's totally cool, man.
Yeah.
Just exercising. Like I'm
For
not going to shit on
general health.
anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. But, yeah, I like to turn. I'm definitely an extremist, so I like to turn into that, or it just kind of loses its flavor. Yeah. So, your growth as a coach, how has that changed now that you're a clinician?
Oh man, that's a loaded question.
Yeah. I know for me, I have a lot more empathy for people that are coming in having chronic issues, chronic injuries. I definitely dial it back way more than I used to.
I guess from a clinician standpoint, it's more of like I want you to be able to move well and be able to like have a little bit of an aerobic capacity that's like healthy for you. So teaching biomechanics of movement, I feel like is crucial because I feel like if a lot of people's issues are they just don't move right in everyday life, and that compounds throughout their movements, whatever they're doing, and it leads to injury and compensation and whatever. So, and we do a lot of that, right? Like we teach biomechanics, proper biomechanics as coaches. So if you teach it in a proper way, and that's one of like the stipulations with CrossFit, like, oh, like you're always going to get injured if you do CrossFit. And it's like, it depends on the coach that's teaching you. Like if you learn the movements the right way, yes, it's at a high intensity, form breaks down, I get that. But if you learn the basics first and you learn it with good form, then your chances of getting hurt are slim.
Also fuck that reasoning, because they're always evidence-based clinicians saying that, and they're like evidence-based, and then they're making like that's anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
Like it's not. It's just a logic.
It's very
mistake.
logical.
And then such a bias, because if you're in a clinic seeing injured people, every CrossFitter you see is in your clinic.
Yeah.
You're going to assume a higher rate of injury. I'm not saying it's low.
Yeah.
But there is some internal bias there that I can't stand. And then people enjoy it. You know?
Oh, absolutely.
Like if a rock climber comes in and they have chronic arthritis in their hands, but they love rock climbing and that's why they live, like, are you gonna tell them to stop rock climbing?
No.
Or are you just gonna make it work?
Manage it.
Yeah.
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 And yeah,
crazy.
that's a really good point.
Yeah. So college sports into CrossFit, how is that different from a coaching perspective?
So
You just started a couple years ago coaching CrossFit.
I started coaching probably like maybe the summer of 2018. So my undergrad, I had to do an internship at the end of my degree, and that my boss, head strength coach Chris Kerr, that I worked for in my master's, was like, hey, you're going to do your internship at CrossFit Lynchburg. And like, I didn't even have a choice. He was like, you're going to do it there. And I was like, okay. His rationale for that was you can never see a movement too many times. He's like, if you're going to coach, you can't see someone do a clean, snatch, squat, front squat, deadlift too many times. Like everybody moves kind of different. You're going to have to give different cues to people. And so he's like, you're just going to get immersed in this the whole summer, and it's going to set you up for a lot of success. So that set me up really, really well, like in terms of like how to cue people, how to like interact with them, how to talk to them in terms of like fixing things. What was your original question? Like,
just how the CrossFit coaching versus collegiate athlete.
Yeah. Obviously the programming is a lot different.
Yeah.
Collegiate programming is a lot more like sports specific, depending on the sport. So like with wrestling, we do like a lot of like explosive, powerful movements, like weird stuff, like like putting their feet on a towel and have them like kind of like plank walk as fast as they can, like 10 yards, stuff like that. Like just kind of like weird stuff that they would kind of like eat up that would also make them like, because they're always going to be in a weird position. So putting them in those positions, you know, in practice or in the weight room is going to directly translate onto the mat. Whereas CrossFit is like, hey, let's put together. CrossFit's the best way to get fit, in my opinion. Like I'm 100% biased because I love CrossFit. But, you know, do you know the definition of CrossFit? I'm putting you on the spot, I guess.
Functional movements, high intensity, constantly varied.
Yeah. Constantly varied functional movements executed at a high intensity.
Is that it? Did I get it?
And then I think it goes on to like across broad times and modal domains, which means like the time is always changing. Like it could be 60 minutes or it could be, you know, a Fran time, which is like 3 minutes.
Sure.
And then modal domains, you could, you know, run outside, you could be on a rower, you could be doing burpees in the sand, like whatever. Like it's so varied in its programming that in and of itself leads to fitness. So like people always argue like what is fitness, and it's like there's so many aspects to fitness. And as CrossFitters, we're trying to be, you know, like that like middle to top end of everything. So marathoners are the top 99% in running, or like running that specific distance, right? Usain Bolt is the 100th percentile in the 100-meter sprint. Whereas CrossFitters, we're trying to get like, we want to be in like that 75th percentile in everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think like that goal of trying to be kind of like that moderate percentile is kind of like what leads to overall fitness in general. So yeah, I'm just biased in my aspect that like CrossFit is the best way to get fit.
Yeah. So I saw you chucking up some numbers on the snatch the other day.
Oh yeah, I think it was 205.
205.
Yeah.
Cool.
My max is only like 235. So
That's pretty impressive.
strength has never been an ally for me.
Yeah.
It's weird.
How do you coach the snatch?
How do you coach the snatch?
As regards to, so I went to a gym in Western Canada, and this guy, I forget, first name's Guy. He was an Olympic guy.
Nice.
And taught me a European style of weightlifting that is really balanced over the midfoot when you hit triple extension, so not super far lean back.
Yeah.
And then I come in the States is pretty much all catapult lifting, so that's, you know, weight on the heels, catapult that bar. What do you teach? Triple extension? Are you a catapult guy?
No, and again, it's weird because like I'm not coaching like Olympic level weightlifters. It's like your everyday CrossFitters.
Sure.
And so what I think people mix up too, and I've always said this about gymnastics in CrossFit as well. CrossFitters weightlift a little bit different than weightlifters, and they also do gymnastics very different than gymnasts. And so I don't necessarily think coaching them in like that elite sport the same exact way is going to be like as beneficial for them unless they're like at the top end elite aspect of the sport. So yeah, what I teach is more of that triple extension type, like when you make that hip contact, like using your lats, keep the bar in close. A lot of people struggle with that hip contact. Have you found that? Like bar contact?
Definitely.
My easiest way to explain it is like, if you are using your lats enough to keep the bar close to your body, like use it as a razor blade. That's what I say. Like if the bar was a razor blade, it'd shave every single hair on the way up.
Sure.
If you're using your lats to keep the bar close enough and your hips come through into extension, the bar has to hit your hips. That's like an intersection point that's inevitable if you do both of those things. And then getting people to keep their lats on when they hit their hips, because if they don't, the bar just does like a huge swing away out. So like this is kind of, I guess, crass, but one of my cues is like jump, don't hump.
Yep.
And so a lot of people, like, they literally just like slam their hips into the bar and it goes forward, and they either have to like run forward to catch it or whatever, you know the drill. But then kind of if you jump with it, like use your hips as like a scooping motion along with the high pull, and then you turn it through, like that kind of like makes sense to people.
Yeah.
And the general public, you have to use cues like that. You can't use like, I don't know, even like extension. Like people don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I remember one time in my master's program, we had an intern, and it was kind of a busy hour in the weight room with the athletes, and there was like a couple new athletes that joined the crew team, or I forget what team it was. I think it was crew, but anyways, I was like, hey, I need you to teach this girl how to bench, because like she was like, it was like our first day in the weight room, and the intern was like, okay, yeah, sure, and I was like kind of testing him at the same time, but I also like needed him to do that for me because like I couldn't step away from what I was doing. And like I'm listening to him and like watching him out of the corner of my eye, and he's going like, okay, so protract your shoulder, or like retract your shoulders really far. You're gonna use your lats to like come up to the bar, and like he's saying like come down to like touch your pecs, and then like kind of like just explode up, use your feet to press. And he's saying like all this like advanced stuff, anatomy terms and all that, and this girl's looking at him like he's got like 7 heads.
Yeah.
And I just like pulled him aside after, and I was like, dude, that was a really good explanation, but like that girl didn't understand a lick of it. Because like I think it was probably like her first time in the weight room. Like you get people like that, like they're really good at their sport, but they had never like trained in a weight room before.
Yeah.
And so just like educating him on like, hey, use simpler terms, like that's a skill, honestly. Like dumbing it down is a skill. I honestly think so. And even working at CrossFit in that internship before I got in my master's, like that helped me be able to like dumb down cues for people. So I don't know, like what are some cues that you found work for maybe like Olympic lifting?
Oh, yeah. Well, explaining that second pull. So for those listening, that is when you're Olympic weightlifting, it's the space that happens between the bar being just above your knee to triple extension. And that's for the clean, the snatch. That little space in time is super hard.
Yeah.
As far as motor control go. I really like tactile feedback.
Yeah.
So I will physically get there and be like, I need your knees to move forward.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yes. Back to that power position.
And then people understand upright torso and like balance shifting back and forth, shins perpendicular. Like they understand positional terms like that. Shins perpendicular. You don't need to translate that at all.
Right.
Upright torso.
Do you teach like shoulders over the bar for kind of as long as you can?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Because that almost keeps your hips loaded into flexion longer, so you have more room to extend, if that makes sense.
Yep, totally.
And then another thing I've found is people like to be like, okay, let's open up this can of worms, I guess. So there's kind of like 2 schools of thought with the first pull. And again, for those listening, that first pull is from the floor to your knee. And so I've had this argument with, or I guess not argument, just like conversation with people, but should that first pull be fast or not fast?
Depends if you have control.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect answer.
I stay away from binary answers, yes or no. I think it always depends.
It does depend. Yeah, very true.
Yeah. For someone that's just starting out, slow. Yeah. But
yeah, because I've found like people try and be explosive off the floor. Like yeah, I'm all for like get the bar moving. Something that's in motion is going to stay in motion. But a lot of times they're so explosive off the floor that it jars their form straight from the get-go. And I'm like, controlled and fast is different than explosive. So don't be explosive off the floor, be controlled and fast. And then when you hit your knee for that second pull, like then you can fucking send it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That was John Mayer was talking about how he writes a guitar solo.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, you know what? If you start at 10, you got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that applies to a lot of
sure.
things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like pulling off the floor right away, they're thinking about the third pull before they get to even below the knees.
Right. And then that third pull, I just see so many people dive bomb under the bar. Like the third pull is exactly what it is. It's still a pull. Like you're using the bar to actively pull yourself under the bar. And a lot of people, they just kind of like launch it off their hips in that second pull and then just kind of like dive bomb under it and try and punch the ceiling. And it's like, it can work, but when you're up there and you're pretty high percentages, like it's going to fail. Yeah.
One thing I've struggled with is people will come in and do Olympic lifting every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, can't believe I'm not improving.
Right.
Like, it is such a complex motor pattern.
Yeah.
If you're not doing it at least 3 days a week, do not expect to get better at it.
And I always tell people that when we have like snatch or squat clean or like split jerks day, or I'm like, guys, don't be discouraged if like you can't figure it out because it takes so much practice. Like it's so technical. And then people are like, oh, okay. Like they're kind of like take a breath out and they're like, wow, I'm not as like bad as I think I am at weightlifting.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get good at it, you got to put in the time, but you know, your life will be okay if you're not the most elite weightlifter in a CrossFit class.
Yeah.
So what kind of injuries are you seeing these days as far as CrossFitters?
It's a lot of
as
shoulders.
A coach or as a clinician or both?
Like me personally?
Yeah.
I don't really experiment. Like I have a pretty big injury right now in my right knee. But that's been ongoing for the past 5 years.
Sure.
I don't necessarily blame CrossFit for that at all, but it's a lot of shoulders. I feel like people don't necessarily learn how to control their shoulder girdle before they start learning kind of more of like advanced gymnastic skills and stuff like that. So those like little tiny like rotator cuff muscles just get like super overworked and fatigued, and then people start getting, oh, my shoulder hurts, or they advance their gymnastics too fast. So my general rule of thumb, let's take the pull up. Strict pull up, kipping pull up, butterfly chest to bar, muscle up. That's my personal progression that I think everybody should go through. Now, what you see is people wanting to learn those sexy movements straight away. So it's like you get like a big, I don't know, football guy who like can't play football anymore, right? And he's like found a new passion of CrossFit. Like, hey, I can put my athleticism into this. And I love that. But there's like, he's so passionate about it now that he wants to like skip the progression because he doesn't want to look like he's on the bottom of the totem pole with CrossFit. He is, but he doesn't want to make himself look like that. So he, you know, almost teaches himself how to do butterfly, or like asks a coach who isn't aware of the progression that you should follow to teach him butterfly. And they teach him, and he's, you know, doing it, trying it, and he ends up like hurting his shoulder, or, you know, like gymnastics is pretty hard on your shoulders.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be if you learn it the right way and like follow the right progression. So I think that like, I don't know, that just like lack of progression is almost a risk factor for injury in CrossFit. Yeah.
Yeah. It can be very challenging for people to regress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you're having a bad shoulder day, or there's lots of shoulder programming in the week. There's nothing wrong with skate. And then also the stimulus is different. A strict pull-up and a butterfly pull-up are completely different. One is a metabolic conditioning tool. One is a strength tool. Yeah.
And that's, people are always like, well, like butterfly pull-ups are cheating.
They're
or
not
like,
the
hey,
same thing.
why do you guys do butterfly pull-ups? I love that question, because it's an opportunity for me to educate people on like why we do them, because people just think we look like idiots doing them. And I'm like you said, it's more of like a metabolic conditioning piece. Like as CrossFitters, we're trying to get the most work done in the least amount of time, the most efficient way possible. So butterfly pull-ups are the way to do that. At the same time, you do 100 butterfly pull-ups in a workout and tell me if your biceps and lats are sore the next day. 100% going to be sore.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's an error in logic. You're really comparing a walking lunge and a sprint.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just different things.
Yeah, exactly.
They're both moving forward, but yeah. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah. Those are getting easier and easier to defuse over,
I think
over
so.
the years.
I think people have been more kind of like welcoming of CrossFit as it's gotten older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except, what did Glassman do? He fucked up real bad.
He did, yeah. Oh, man.
It's like,
that freaking guy.
yeah.
I think he was a good CEO. He just like didn't have a filter at all,
Sure.
which got him in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember?
What was he like tweeted something?
Yeah,
He called, he said it's Floyd 19.
yeah, something like that was it.
Yeah.
Hashtag like Floyd 19 or something. And it was like when COVID was happening, and then when like George Floyd died.
Yeah.
And then somehow he put the two together, and it just rattled the internet.
Yeah. I mean,
And then CrossFitters were like unaffiliating with CrossFit, or no, was it they were like not going to the games anymore.
I think Reebok dropped CrossFit
because of
night.
that. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, and then a bunch of athletes were like, I'm out. Like, I'm not standing for what the CEO stands for, which I think was smart. Like, hey, don't affiliate yourself with somebody that, does something like that. But yeah, I think it was Greg's time to go. Like, I feel bad for the guy because like he basically invented CrossFit and now he like doesn't even have like any say in it anymore. I think he's actually doing like some side stuff on the side. But how do you feel about Dave Castro getting fired?
I didn't know anything about that
Until just now?
Yeah.
Do you know who Dave Castro is, right?
I do. He's like the programming wizard.
Yeah, so he's the director of the CrossFit Games. So he programs the Open. He programs or it's not regionals anymore. He programs for the CrossFit Games. And yeah, like it's probably like maybe a week ago.
A week ago.
Yeah, like
really?
super recent. Yeah. I guess Eric Rosa, who's the new CEO of CrossFit. I don't know the whole story actually, but Dave posted something on Instagram about, Rosa calling him and, dismissing him from his position and him just kind of like being blindsided by it. And there's got to be more to the story that I just don't know about. And CrossFit definitely probably has the reasons for it. I know Rosa's, from what I can tell, is a really great CEO in that position. What I don't like though is they put, what's the vice president's name? Justin Berg. He's the vice president of CrossFit, and they put him in the role of Castro's for now. Which, if it's temporary, okay, you just need somebody to fill that spot. So I'm really interested to see who they bring in to fill that new role. Yeah.
As a coach, as a clinician, what advice do you have for bridging the gap? So if a clinician has no knowledge of CrossFit, how can they improve in order to serve people in the CrossFit community? I know there's a disconnect. Lots of times I'll hear, oh, you just shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You're just don't do it. Just quit.
Jeez.
Yeah. Any advice for clinicians out there?
Like they have no education on CrossFit, but they're treating CrossFitters?
Yeah.
Like what would they say to them?
Yeah.
Or maybe what advice would I give a clinician that doesn't know anything about CrossFit? I'd say go try it, first of all.
Go try it.
Yeah. Like CrossFit's more than just like a way to get fit. It's a way to build like some really deep friendships, relationships, camaraderie. Like people say CrossFit's like, oh, it's so expensive. Like I just don't have the money to pay for a CrossFit. I would agree with you. It's expensive. It's like maybe what? I don't know, $100 to $120 a month. Something like that. I get varies.
I've worked at places that are $225.
Yeah.
It goes
depending on where you live, I guess.
Yeah, market standard to yoga studios, karate studios, jiu-jitsu. They're all the same. 100 to 250, something like that. Yeah.
But I always tell people like it's worth every penny that you spend. Like the friendships that you build, the coaches that you get, the programming, like you get programming done for you. You don't have to go and figure out what you're going to do each day. And then, people say like, well, why would I do that when I can just pay for, $5 a month at Planet Fitness or $10 a month at Planet Fitness? And it's like, well, those companies and businesses, they keep their business by people not showing up, right? Like their desire for you is for you to not show up every month and they get a free $10. Whereas CrossFit's desire is like for you to keep showing up based on like everything that they give every month because it's worth the amount that they charge. That's just whatever tangent. But yeah, I would tell that guy like, hey, don't like base a book by its cover or just, have a bias towards it based on all the negatives that you've heard. Like when CrossFit first happened, I guess like rhabdo was like a huge thing. Like, oh, you would just get like rhabdo if you did CrossFit. Like, have you heard that?
Yep.
Yeah. Which is a common misconception. Like, yes, there were probably some cases of rhabdo in CrossFit, but like, I mean, there's cases of rhabdo in wrestling and like every sport.
Yeah. Lots in summer, like training camp for football.
Yeah.
Deconditioned athletes.
Right.
Taking the summer off. And then like Texas, It's fucking like 120
Super
degrees.
hot, yeah.
And then they do like Hell Week or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 days. Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of cases there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as a clinician, I would never like take something that someone's passionate about and like degrade it.
Sure.
Like what kind of person or clinician would you be for your patient if like you said with that rock climber, right? Like if they have arthritic hands, but they love rock climbing with every fiber in their soul, and you're like, hey, you shouldn't rock climb anymore because it's destroying your hands. Like, I don't know.
I don't care if you're a stripper. I'm going to get you back on that pole. You're doing great work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just creating longevity in people's lives through, I mean, like, yeah, if you came to me and you're like, hey doc, I've got all these injuries from CrossFit. I know you don't know anything about that, but I love the sport and I just want to continue to do it. I'd be like, awesome. Like, I'm glad you found something that you're super passionate about. I'm going to help you through whatever I can help you with to like maintain or, make your symptoms or progress your fitness in here with you. And so, yeah, I don't think if you have no experience in CrossFit, I do not think you should bash it at all. Yeah.
I would say going to a class, that's a really good suggestion. Lots of people think that it's just Metcons. It's just a 30-minute circuit with Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah.
It's definitely, there's strength pieces, there's mobility pieces. There's a lot of programming going on. So, if you're a clinician listening, just go to a class.
Yeah.
Go to one of Caleb's classes.
Yeah. It'll be hard, but yeah.
Yeah. So as a chiro intern, what kind of techniques are you liking these days? What kind of lanes do you want to go down? SFMA or FMS or?
Yeah. I like a lot more of that functional approach. So my dream one day is to open up my own CrossFit gym and then base my clinic or run my clinic out of that. I don't know when that's going to happen. I kind of like have this maybe like 10-year time frame from like when I graduate to when I would like to open that. That's just kind of like a number I have in my head. But again, getting people to like move better and teach them proper biomechanics. And if they do have asymmetries or, if you run through that top tier SFMA screen with them and you see, dysfunctional movement, training them into becoming more functional, becoming more pain-free is going to, not eliminate, but make a lot of people's symptoms either disappear or go away, and they can live happier, longer, more longevity lives, if that makes sense. And then pairing CrossFit with it, I just feel like if you pair CrossFit with like that functional based approach to chiropractic, it's just like a recipe for health. Like, because health and wellness is more than just like working out, right? There's like a mental aspect to it. There's a nutritional aspect to it. There's, a bunch of aspects to it that I feel like chiropractic and CrossFit just like check all of those boxes. Yeah.
Awesome, man. You ready for some rapid fire questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Is it possible to work out to country music?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. I do it sometimes. Sometimes I feel like it keeps my heart rate lower.
It's the most polarizing music I've ever played. Like, there's at least like 2 people that are just like, are you kidding me right now?
People hate it.
I hate you.
Yeah. But like compare working out to like a metal song compared to like, I don't know, like Luke Combs. Like your heart rate's just gonna be lower. Like it's like feel good music. You know what I'm saying? Whereas like if you get like Pig Squeal, Screamo, like you're probably gonna be anxious just like listening to that in general. Yeah.
I just listen to Kenny G when I'm working out alone.
Yeah.
I like those clarinet solos.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my
Do you
jam.
really?
No, I'm kidding.
Okay, I was like,
That'd be ridiculous.
whatever.
Yeah. Least favorite movement to coach?
Oh, to coach. I honestly don't know. Maybe the hardest one for me to coach.
Hardest. Yeah.
Would probably be like either the squat clean or squat snatch.
So by least favorite, let's go with more difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like people struggle. Like people understand power more than squat. in terms of Olympic lifting, but when you add in the squat, like it just throws in a whole other wrench. So getting people to like understand that more. So how I've always kind of coached that was like, let's catch it into power and then ride it down the rest of the way in the squat and then stand back up and then do that. And then you can start to slowly maybe catch that power a little bit lower and then eventually kind of connect the two into one fluid motion, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
When do you take your shirt off in a workout?
Oh, man.
Before or during?
It depends. If it's in the summer, absolutely before. 100%. Yeah. But sometimes, like, if I take my shirt off, I'll, like, save it as, like, a second boost or something. If I'm really feeling like I'm feeling sorry for myself in the middle of the workout.
Mario mushroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I call it. A little more,
Do you really?
Yeah. Where you take that and you double in size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of get that second wind.
Sure.
It cools you down. It kind of like brings you back to earth.
And now you have a towel.
Yeah.
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 That's great.
Sweatbands too. That's
Totally.
one of my.
You wear
just go like this.
sweatpants.
Sweatbands on your arms.
Like
Especially for gymnastics. So like if you a lot of times, like, have you ever had like your grips get like so sweaty when you put chalk on? It's like toothpaste basically.
Sure.
Yeah, like because sweat falls from your upper body down onto your wrist, and so like if you wear like sweatbands, it catches that and it keeps your grips dry. Little pro tip.
Wow. What a technician you are.
Yeah.
Favorite way to spend a rest day?
I don't know if I necessarily believe in rest days. Like rest days in terms of like sitting on the couch doing nothing, just watching Netflix all day.
Yeah. Could it be a walk in nature?
Yeah. But I would consider that like an active rest
Active
day.
recovery day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people mistake active recovery day. Like they'll go in and be like, I'm just going to like bike for like 30 minutes. And then it turns into like a workout.
Yeah.
Like don't get sucked into the trap of like, if you're going in to do active recovery, it should be at like almost less than a conversation pace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like take your dog on a walk.
Sure.
Or yeah, something. So like I always try and do something, even though it is a rest day. If I do take like a rest day of like no movement at all, I try and have it be more of like an intellectually high day. So if I'm not stressing my body physically very hard, then like the intellectual aspect, in my opinion, should increase. So I'll do more like continuing ed stuff, watch more YouTube. I'm a huge YouTube guy. I've always said like, if you want to find out what someone's passionate about, look on their YouTube homepage because like that'll tell you what they're passionate about. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's your current favorite Metcon shoe?
Ooh, like a training shoe?
Training shoe, yeah.
Probably, I don't even know. Maybe like 6 or 8 months ago, I got my first pair of Vivo barefoots.
Sure.
And so I have one that I wear in the clinic, and then I also have a pair that I train in. And I actually train in Vivo barefoots. I don't train in like a CrossFit shoe anymore.
Yeah. They got the wide toe box, right? Yeah.
So I have very like wide feet, I have very wide toes, and like shoes just felt like suffocating for me for like so long until I found those Vivos. And like when I first started wearing them, my feet were actually kind of like sore. Like it takes you a little bit to get used to them just because like all those intrinsic muscles are like really working harder. Like our feet are coddled, in my opinion, with a lot. I would definitely not run in them. I would probably use a pair of like running shoes if I were to run like long distances. But yeah, from what I've experienced so far working out in them, like they're awesome. Like they take a little bit of getting used to, but then when I go back, like I put my Nanos on. I was a Nano guy, to answer your question. I like Reebok Nanos better than Metcons. But I put my Nanos on like a couple days ago actually to run on the True Form, and I was like, my feet are suffocating. Like I just felt like they were in like a box almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the toe shoes. Those
Do you really?
No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
I've never had a pair of those.
I had a pair, unfortunately. Yeah.
Did you like them?
You know what? I didn't like the way I looked in them, but they felt okay.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't wear them outside the house, you know? I just couldn't.
I actually just got a pair of toe spacers for Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah.
How those working? I might.
They're interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
They do anything?
I would have to probably be on more of like a consistent schedule wearing them. I just kind of throw them on like when I remember I have them. Like I wore them today for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But they say on the box like have them or like wear them for like 10 to 15 minutes at a time and then like increase your capacity after that. And I was like, I know, bitch. Like I'm going to keep them on. Like the first time I wore them, I wore them for like 30 minutes and I was like, oh my gosh. Like they're sore. Like my toes were getting like sore.
Yeah.
And so I took them off and I was like, wow, like it doesn't really feel like anything like happened. But like as you're wearing them, like it spreads your toes out like pretty freaking far. Do you follow Move You on Instagram?
Yep.
There was one, they're all about like Vivo barefoots and like toe spacers and stuff like that. There was one that I remember where they said that as humans, we're supposed to be able to walk on the knuckles of our feet. And like the guy did it, like he jumped on the knuckles of his feet and just like started walking. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of insane.
End range flexion. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird, right? Like you can walk on your knuckles, like of your hands.
That's very true. Yeah.
So like, why wouldn't you be able to on your feet? I don't know. I mean, there's smaller joints down there, I guess, but yeah, that'd be interesting.
That's the mobility challenge of the year. Let's do it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, man, it was great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's get you back here.
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah.